For the hastening of the reappearance of our beloved Imam, please recite a salawat. So that we may be among his beloved companions, his supporters and his sincere lovers, please recite another loud salawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا مولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين. First and foremost, as always, I would like to thank Allah for giving us the opportunity to get together again, have this program. We pray whatever is said and whatever is heard helps us gain proximity towards Him, towards the Ahlul Bayt, and especially towards the beloved Imam of our time. By the right of the final messenger, we gather to celebrate the birth anniversary of our beloved Prophet, and we pray that he turns his attention towards us and gives barakah to this session by the thawab from another loud salawat. You guys have probably realized, like just generally in our discussions, we try and approach the understanding of things which we generally know in a slightly different manner, seeing them in a slightly different way, and seeing how maybe that can affect, or that can take effect in our day-to-day lives in a slightly different way, and hopefully change the status quo of how we find things to be. I had the honor of being with you for the discussion of Iman and what the understanding of Iman is. With some of the sisters, we're running weekly sessions online, and we're going through the section of Tawheed, like trying to understand the correct definition of Tawheed and what that correct definition means, how it manifests itself in our day-to-day life. Today I want to touch upon the concept of Nabuwah. Again, just like Tawheed, I don't want to approach it in a way that we have kind of grown up with, like in our madrasas and stuff. You have the section on Tawheed where it says, okay, definition of Tawheed is oneness of God, and then it goes through some of the proofs for the existence of God, then it introduces some of the characteristics. The way that we approached it was different, and you know, the sisters have gone through it. The brothers, if you want to know, you'll have to get more organized and let me know. Same thing with Nabuwah. Rather than just like repeating what we already know of Nabuwah, I'm hoping that I could present a slightly different way of looking at it, and then, as I said, like seeing how that could potentially affect us, make us realize where we stand. One of the other things I really don't like doing is making everyone enter a bubble completely detached from the world that we live in for about an hour, talking about something which is nice, right, but it doesn't actually have any effect in the real world. So I'm going to try my best to avoid that as well. Some of the foundational discussions, however, are theoretical. I will put that out there, but hopefully that theory leads us onto certain questions which will try and help us understand what our responsibility is right now. The first question I want to ask is, so if you look at generally how Nabuwah is approached, they try and talk about the necessity of prophethood. So you go from the discussion of how Allah is wise, and someone who is wise and is expecting people to reach a certain destination, they wouldn't just leave people to try and find that destination by themselves, right? They're going to at least provide the address, They may provide a certain guide of how to get there. Through that, I've simplified that discussion in a couple of sentences. You're supposed to reach the understanding that having a prophet is necessary, right? For a wise, if we believe in a wise creator, having a prophet is necessary, and therefore we have prophethood. That's generally how it's approached. I want to see it from a slightly different angle, right? What differentiates us from animals? Okay, animals, they use basic instincts, their basic instincts, to survive. Okay, those basic instincts motivate them to quench the thirsts which exist within them, and that maintains their survival. Okay. At most, some of the smartest animals, what they're able to do is not just live off their instincts, but they are able to connect some dots and have this very limited intellect, which allows them to realize that, oh, you know, this sharp, pointy thing, actually, I'm not going to touch it to figure out it's going to hurt me. I've reached an understanding that it hurts me, and they don't go near it, for example. There's lots of experiments done, you know, to show this. Like, for example, when a certain animal, he feels pain at the same time he hears the sound of a bell, right? Next time, even though that pain may not be there, as soon as he hears the bell, they become a bit more aware that, oh, there's danger, there's something that could hurt me, right? It shows that they have this certain level of understanding. So it's not just instincts, but there's that basic level of understanding as well. Humans are somewhat the same. When we begin our lives, like as babies, how do babies survive, right? It's those basic instincts which are within them that motivate them to fulfill those basic needs which help them to survive, right? If a baby was hungry but didn't have that instinct to lead him towards like the need for food, they would die, they would perish, right? They wouldn't know what quenches that. That's within their nature, right? That's what instincts are. Same thing, like a baby would go towards something pointy, like they would, you know, try and touch it, they'd pick up a knife not realizing like what it is, right? And they would get hurt. But the next time they won't do that, right? Again, their instinct would tell them like, okay, don't touch this, or something hot, for example. My daughter, who's about 8 months old, just learned how to crawl. And it's the winter, and we have radiators at home. For some reason, like, she's not moving from that basic instinct level of understanding that if you go towards this white thing on the wall, you're going to get burnt, right? That's what babies are, right? Babies have this basic level of instinct. Eventually, they reach the understanding, connecting the dots, just as animals do, that, okay, this is associated with pain, right? So I'm not going to go close to it. So there's nothing at that point which actually differentiates us from animals, right? Animals have that basic instinct, and then a very limited intellect which allows them to connect certain dots. Same with humans. We have that as babies, we have that very basic instinct, and we have a certain level of intellect that helps us connect the dots, right? So what differentiates us from them? We said like these two things are within us and are within animals to help them survive, right? There's a difference between living and surviving, right? Were we just supposed to survive, or were we supposed to live? There comes a stage where we get used to this process, this, okay, basic instinct, you understand something, connect the dots, and we get used to this stage, and we become very good at fulfilling our basic needs using our instincts and the small levels of understanding our intellect can take us at, right? Become very, very good at it. But ultimately, as your life continues, as you develop more and more in your life, what happens is that this intellect becomes a slave of the needs and desires and wants of your nature, right? So all of your intellect becomes a servant of the fulfillment of those basic, very superficial needs and wants and desires that you have. You know, like as humans, like I use my intellect to connect the dots of what causes pain and suffering and what gives me pleasure. And then I use my intellect at most to devise ways of how I can, you know, achieve these two objectives. You know, staying away from pain and then we get stuck over there. Like ultimately, that becomes... Ultimately, that becomes our life, right? We get stuck in this and that becomes our life. But again, we said like animals as well, right? They have that instinct. They begin connecting the dots. Then there's some really smart animals who are able to devise ways in which they're able to get that pleasure more easily, and they're able to stay away from pain better, right? The Prophet came to us to raise us from that level of just instincts and that limited place our limited intellect can take us. We're going to expand on that point. Just on a side note, by the way, like one of the things that you hear, I generally I used to hear this a lot from my relatives. So we're a very interesting family. Like we come from a mixture of those who are leaning towards religion, and then we have those in our family who are banned in Pakistan from giving lectures in university because they were communists, right? Like super anti-religion, right? One of the things that they would always like kind of tease us as like when we were kids is, you know, like, why are you being religious? Like religion restricts you, you know, live your life, right? That little statement used to annoy me so much, you know, enjoy life, like live your life. What do they mean by this? When they're saying live your life, what do they mean by this? Do they mean that I should basically stay away from pain and do whatever I can to get pleasure? Because that one, all that's doing is it's allowing me to survive, and at most it is making me the same as animals, at most, right? So when you're saying live life, enjoy life, whatever, what life are you talking about? Our Prophet, when he comes and he raises our level, right, from the level of instincts and that limited intellect, when he raises our level, he is teaching us how to live as dignified human beings, not as good animals, right? And I'm telling you, the best of us who do not fall in the line of the divine movement and the divine symbols of the movement, the best of us can become good animals, but we're not human beings. Okay? And the worst of us, as we know, can become worse than the worst of the animals. You know, just like our physical bodies, like when we're babies, we have the potential within us to grow bigger and stronger. Right? Our real existence, right? Our soul has the potential to grow bigger and stronger and reach heights which we could not even imagine. Right? The prophets come to take us out of that level of just surviving and living like this. There's a beautiful saying of Amirul Mu'mineen. Please recite salawat. Or at the very least, it's attributed to him, very famously attributed to him as well. But personally, I've not seen the narration or studied it myself. He says, "Your sickness is from you, but you do not perceive it, and your remedy is within you, but you do not sense it. You presume you are a small entity." Right, staying at that level of basic instincts and that small limited level that your intellect can take you. You presume you are a small entity, but within you is enfolded the entire universe. Talking about the potential that you can reach. You are indeed the evident book by whose alphabets the hidden becomes manifest, and so on and so forth. Right? That's a hint towards what we can become. That's a hint towards the potential our existence actually has. The reason why we have the prophets is because they take us from that level and introduce us and present to us these levels. Take the example of a block of wood, right? Imagine we're all just blocks of wood. I know how blocks of wood walk, like waddling along, right? That's what we are, blocks of wood. that same block and wood, if it's given in the hands of that master like carpenter, the master artist or the craftsman, they can change that block of wood into something mesmerizing, something so beautiful. The job of the Prophet is to take you beyond this very superficial existence that you have and mold you into something so beautiful that when the angels look at you, they are struck in awe. The job of the Prophet is to take you to a level that can make you so powerful, this human being that you see, so powerful that the mountains are supposed to crumble before you can crumble. That's the job of the prophets. That's why the prophets come. The time that our final messenger came, if you look at Nahj al-Balagha, sermon number 26, Amir al-Mu'mineen describes the time that the Prophet came. He says, "Verily Allah sent him as a warner against vice for all the worlds and a trustee of his revelation, while you people of Arabia," so talking to the people that were in front of him, "were following the worst religion." Over here the translation, they've translated it to religion, but what is meant here is the path that you were following. It doesn't specifically mean a specific religion that they were following. It meant the path that they were following. You were following the worst religion, and you resided among rough stones and venomous serpents. You drank dirty water and ate filthy food. You shed blood of each other and cared not for relationship. Idols are fixed amongst you and sins are clinging to you. This is what the Prophet came down to. In reality, what is this describing? It's describing the level that we reach whilst we're in the pursuit of just our desires, whilst we're trapped inside the motivations presented to us by our basic instincts and the very limited use of our intellect. That's what Amir al-Mu'mineen is describing. That's what the people were like. That's who the Prophet came down to. Sayyid al-Qaid, Ayatollah Khamenei, in that green book, the famous green book that we've been going through, he says in there that do not see the miracle of the Prophet as the splitting of the moon. Do not see the miracle of the Prophet as the tree walking towards him. All these like famous stories that we hear. The miracle of the Prophet was that he was able to take people who were drowning in the pursuit of the fulfillment of their basic animalistic desires and turn their attention towards lofty divine goals. That was the miracle of the Prophet. He was able to take people drowning in the deep, dark depths of ignorance and turn them towards light. That was the miracle of the Prophet. And we're talking about people, like we said, they used to bury their daughters alive, they used to treat their women with such disrespect, like filth, absolute filth. And in those people, he brought about this level of purity and purification that was like, that we are still in awe of till now. The hearts had turned into rocks, stones. The miracle of the Prophet was to turn these sharp, dark rocks in the hearts of these supposed human beings, turn them into gold. That was the miracle of the Prophet. Again, in Sermon 89 of Nahj al-Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, describing again what it was like, evils were raising heads, all matters were under disruption and in flames of war, while the world was devoid of brightness and full of open deceitfulness. That's what the situation was. And what did he turn to? Amir al-Mu'mineen, when you look at the sermons where he's talking about what the Prophet came down to, the reason why he's doing that is he's trying to show the people that, look, you are turning back towards that. Am I different from what the Prophet came out to do? The Prophet came to change darkness into light. Am I different from that? We should take these as warnings for ourselves as well. If you look at the context he was speaking in, we should take these as warnings for ourselves as well. Imagine the Imam of our time saying this to us right now. Am I different? Is the path I follow different? Then why do you not follow me? We remember the Prophet today, and ultimately the message that I want to end up with is this. That do you really want to go back into that filth, into that darkness, into that ignorance? If not, then why are you not following me? In the Quran, like very famous verse, 164 of Surah Al Imran, Allah certainly favored the faithful when He raised up among them an apostle from among themselves to recite to them His signs and to purify them and teach them the book and wisdom. And earlier they had indeed been in manifest error. Pretty much summarizing everything that we said. The Prophet came to change them from that manifest error that they were in into purity, into the light. That's why the prophets came, okay? Keep that in mind. Why do we still remember him? Okay, after so many years, why do we still remember him? You know, like, on one side, okay, he has so many virtues, and considering it is the remembrance of the Prophet and it is his birthday, you can mention some of them. There's so many. I mean, his life, every step he took was a virtue. Every breath he made was a virtue. Every word he spoke was a virtue. There's some famous stories, you guys have heard them 100 times, so I'm not going to go into details of them, but just to remind ourselves like who this personality was. He was always at the forefront. Remember in the discussion we had on Iman, we said one of the characteristics of a good leader is that he is at the forefront. He's not giving instructions from the back and expecting people to do it. No, he is at the forefront of doing what needs to be done. And okay, maybe he'll actually turn back and tell people, hey guys, you know, do this. But people will do what they need to do because they see the leader doing it. That's a good leader, right? He was always at the forefront. There's a very famous story in the Battle of Khandaq when Salman gave the idea to the Prophet that just like the Persians, they used to dig up the trenches, like maybe we can do this to protect ourselves and be able to fight on one specific front because of how outnumbered they were, right? The Prophet didn't just agree to it. He didn't just order the trench to be built. The first person to start digging was the Prophet. Always at the forefront. He would be in the midst of the battle. He wouldn't be like, okay guys, you know, the trench is dug, I'm going to go back to Medina, you guys like fight. No, he'd be in the midst of the battle. And obviously like in the early years, like, you know, we know about the wounds that he had, which Lady Zahra sallallahu alayha would be nursing, right? He would go in the middle of the people, even if he had to face the garbage, even if he had to face the stones, he would always be at the forefront. He was always with the needy. You know, when he entered Medina after leaving Mecca, he came to a people that took him in with open arms. You know, he came like as their ruler. They loved him more than they loved anyone else. He could have made his house anywhere he wanted to. He could have built a palace for himself if he wanted to. At the very least, he could have made his house in the richest quarters with the biggest and most noblest of families over there. But no, he didn't. He allowed the famous story goes, he allowed his camel to go and said, wherever the camel stops, that's where my house will be. And the camel ended up stopping in the most poorest area of the whole city. And that's where he built his base. That's where he stayed initially. He's always with the needy. That's the Prophet we're talking about. A Prophet which is so in touch with the oppressed and downtrodden of the society. That's the Prophet we're talking about. Like he was so one with the downtrodden and the oppressed that when ambassadors and dignitaries from all over the world would come to visit him, like they just wouldn't believe that they're talking to the leader of the Muslims. Why? Because, you know, where's his crown? Where's his throne? Where's lavish clothes? Yeah. Of course, the beauty of the scent and the sight of the Prophet was there. But in their minds, the leader they have their own image of what the leader should be. Right? That's how much he was one with the people. There's so many stories which show how caring he was. Like his heart, you just melt into this personality. Very famous story when someone came to give grapes to the Prophet. And usually if someone would bring gifts and there'd be other people around, he would share those, he would share that gift with the others that are around him. But he took the grapes, he had one, and he ate all of them. And the person who gave it was really happy, but the companions around him were slightly confused. They're like, why didn't you share, kind of thing. I'm super paraphrasing. What was his response? The reason why he didn't share it is because when he had the first grape, it was sour. And he was afraid that if the other companions also tasted the grapes, and they tasted how sour they were, they would complain. And it would break the heart of the person who's brought in the gift. So he ate them all himself. And he thanked the person who brought the gift. That's how caring he was. He didn't want to upset him. There's stories, a very famous story, when there was this woman who, in Medina, she was migrating, she was leaving the city, because she had heard that the magician, A'udhu Billah, has come, and she didn't want to be affected by him. So the Prophet saw this old woman carrying bags, like heavy bags, and asked, what are you doing? And she said, I'm leaving the city, I'm migrating, because the magician has come and he's going to, bring calamities to the city and so on and so forth. And the Prophet didn't say anything. Like, she was talking about him, right? He didn't say anything. He helped her. He helped her to such an extent, he listened to her to such an extent that she began to notice this beautiful fragrance coming from him. She began to realize how soft upon her eyes the sight of his face was. How much care, how much love. There's so many stories as the leader of the Muslim Ummah. Okay, let's make it a bit more grander than that. Forget the leader of the Muslim Ummah. The best creation that ever was and ever will be in the eyes of Allah. That's who he was. There's so many stories that when he would see, for example, again, an elderly person carrying water and struggling to take it to their house, he would take it from their hands and he'd talk with them, he'd laugh at them, he'd take it to their houses. That's how much he cared. This is the personality we're talking about. He taught us respect. Just if you look at how he treated his own daughter, Lady Zahra Salamun alayha, he would get up whenever she would enter and give up his own space for her. Right? At a time when he's surrounded by people who not too long ago were burying their daughters, the way he would address Lady Zahra was with so much love and respect. He would call her a part of my flesh. That's how he would address her. There's this very famous incident he was near the Holy Kaaba, and there was this youth who was carrying his mother on his back. So this young person was carrying his mother on his back and doing the tawaf. Right? He saw the Prophet, and when he finished doing tawaf, he went to the Prophet to kind of show off, right? But in a nice way, not in a, look at what I'm doing kind of way. He said to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, how much reward have I got for this act that I've done? Taking my mother in tawaf. What was his response? You have not even given back to her to the extent of one scream she had as she was giving birth to you. Teaching respect for the mother, teaching respect for the daughter. That's who our Prophet was. That's who this personality is that we've gathered to remember. But the question remains, why? Why are we remembering it? Why are we going through the virtues of such a person? Please recite salawat. This is where the discussion gets slightly scary. Because we need to start asking ourselves these questions. Is our relationship with our Prophet supposed to be like how our relationship is, for example, with like our favorite football team, for example, or like our favorite, player? I'm presuming football is the sport in Denmark which everyone. Should I use handball as an example? Okay, football it is. Okay, is that how we're supposed to like the Prophet, the way we like our football team? When we hear good things about them, we get happy. Yeah. Are we supposed to support our Prophet the way we support our football team when we're watching a football match on the TV? Like we see them doing something good, we start clapping. Right? We get happy. Ultimately, is you being happy or you clapping in front of a TV helping your football team in any way whatsoever? Do we remember that? Do we remember the Prophet in a way that we are basically happy and we're basically clapping, but this happiness and clapping has absolutely no effect whatsoever on that divine symbol of the divine movement or upon ourselves? Is that how we're remembering him? Are we remembering him to prove that he was a nice person? We just went through a whole list of his virtues. Like, are we doing that to prove that he was a nice person? Even the sworn enemies of the Prophet accepted the virtues that he had. For them, it was proven who he was. Remember when he introduced the initial open invitation? What did he say? He asked them, if I told you that there was an army behind the hill who was about to ambush you, would you believe me or not? They said, yes. You have not said a word of lie in your life. Right? So the virtues were even proven for them. So if we are listing the virtues of the Prophet for the sake of proving that he was good, okay, well then we are about, alhamdulillah, we reached the same level as some of his sworn enemies. Is that it? Is that how we're supposed to remember the Prophet? Is that why we're remembering him right now? What does the Quran say our relationship should be with the Prophet? Very simple. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أطيعوا الله ورسوله لعلكم ترحمون. Obey Allah and the Apostle so that you may be among the merciful. That is what is expected of you. Not your smile, not your clapping, not you attesting to the fact that I believe this person was amazing. What is expected of you is obedience. The reason why we remember the virtues of this personality is to remind ourselves that he is worthy of disobedience. It's to motivate ourselves. These are little the reason why we have this every year is to remind ourselves again and again that this person that the Quran says we have to obey, just like you're supposed to obey Allah the way because we recognize he's worthy of it, we obey the Prophet because we recognize he is worthy of it, and that recognition comes through discussing some of his virtues. Please recite a salawat. This is the nature of the attachment that we're supposed to have with the Prophet. And for those of you who've been coming to the monthly program that we've been having, we've been looking at the series of wilayah. What is the nature of this attachment that we're supposed to have, right? Attachment equals wilayah in its most basic definition. Okay. This attachment, the nature of this attachment is that he is the wali, he is the mawla, he is the one that has the authority to have guardianship over us, and we are the ones that are under that authority. Imagine I'm going to present to you an example, and imagine if just the emotional attachment was enough. I may have mentioned this in our previous sessions. Take the example of a book factory. I don't know if you guys have actually been to a place where they are publishing, like printing books. I think it's beautiful. Sheikh, have you seen like a printing like place where they're printing books and stuff? It's such a beautiful thing. I would have never thought I'd actually be interested in seeing how, a book is like, just printed. It's actually quite beautiful, the whole process. You see different parts of the whole factory working on different things, right? So one part is working on printing, one part, even before that, they're working on creating the template for each and every page. Then one part is working on the printing side of it. Then one part is working on the cutting them into actual pages. One part is working on binding, the cut pages together. And then one part is working on making the cover of the book, and so on and so forth, right? You have all of these. They receive their orders from the head of the factory, right? Imagine if the attachment that they had with the head of the factory was just an emotional attachment. Okay. So he's giving orders. He's like, look, you need to create this book, right? And this section does this section does this, and so on and so forth. He gives you orders, right? And he's like, I really like him. He's such a kind and generous person. He's very nice to us. By the way, are you actually going to do what he told you to do? He's like, no. He's a really nice person. Is that book ever going to be made? If you're not following the wali, if you're not following the final messenger, remember the objective he came down for? Are you ever actually going to end up achieving the potential that's inside of you? If you just have an emotional attachment to him. You having an emotional attachment is not going to help fulfill the objective of the Prophet, which was to raise you from that level and make you into, stronger than mountains. You following him will do that. Please recite salawat. So we're saying that the Prophet came down to raise the level of the people. The first recipients of that should have been us. Right? The Muslims. Right? So he came down, he continued his message. Obviously the message spread, Muslims increased. But ultimately, that raising of the level, the first recipients of that, the ones who should fulfill that first and foremostly are the Muslims. What happened? Potentially it was because they didn't realize what the nature of this relationship with the Prophet should be. So the Prophet came, he had this objective, we were supposed to follow. If that was the case, then why is it me as a Muslim, someone who accepts his wilayah? Why is it that my life is not actually that different from someone who doesn't accept his wilayah? Who doesn't have an attachment with him? My objectives are the same. I want a secure job. I want a stable family. I want a big house. I want a nice car. Okay, your objectives are the same. Your likes and dislikes are the same. Your schedule is exactly the same. What is different? If you have accepted that, then why is your life exactly the same as those people whose objective is not to reach this divine existence? Is it because we are forgetting what the nature of that relationship should be? In Surah Hajj, verse number 78, Allah says, He has chosen you and has not placed for you any obstacle in the religion, the faith of your father Ibrahim. He named you Muslims before, and in this, so that, this is the important bit, so that the apostle, so that the Prophet may be witness over you, and that you may be a witness to mankind. Hang on a second. Not only is this saying that, the Prophet came so that you raise your level, It's saying that you're supposed to have risen your level to such an extent, like this is such a important thing or necessary thing for you, that it will help you actually fulfill what your objective is, which is to raise the level of everyone else. The Prophet is a witness over you so that you may be a witness over mankind. You are supposed to be the agents of that change that the Prophet is trying to bring about towards mankind. Right? We should use that at the very least as motivation to just not keep floating and drifting through our lives the same way as everyone else is. What's expected is that you are supposed to raise the level of everyone else, not become like them, not have absolutely any difference in your lives from them. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be the agents of that change. It's so important that however big or small you are in numbers, whatever you think your quality is, each and every person, each and every individual has that responsibility. Each and every single person has the responsibility to change others. But with the recognition that that change obviously needs to happen within you first. And it's a huge task. The presence of a Muslim should be such that it affects the lives and conditions of those around them. That's what a Muslim is supposed to do. I mentioned this so many times, again, something that's attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen, but this I'm pretty sure he hasn't said it, but it's such a beautiful saying. A believer is someone who treads lightly but leaves a heavy footprint. Right? What are we doing? How many decades have we been, like in the West, for example? We are jumping up and down, and we look down and there's not even a sign that we were even present. Our being here and not being here, it's been exactly the same. What effect have we had on our surroundings? What effect have we had on the conditions of those around us? But that was always our responsibility. Forget that. We are losing within ourselves. As individuals, we are not able to achieve that level. I can speak for myself anyway. Let alone being those who affect the conditions around them. That's what following of the Prophet means. You raise your level so that the level of mankind could be risen. If you are not doing it, do not expect it to happen elsewhere. There's a beautiful saying that our Fatemiyun says, which I'm sure I've said about 100 times as well, that until the good become better, the bad will not become good. It is your responsibility. If you want people to become close to the Prophet, if you're not understanding why people are not getting Islam, it's because of you. It's because of me. We have to take charge of this. We have to understand that, and it can only happen if we're actually following the Prophet and not just being an audience which claps whenever we hear good things about the Prophet. Once we start following, we become that which attracts others. We become the magnet which attracts others towards the messenger. That's what our responsibility is. Recite salawat. I promised I would do this maybe a month ago, and just been waiting for the right opportunity, and I'm going to have to slot this in over here, right? So we're talking about people who have that effect. One of the things that we have been able to do, alhamdulillah, a group of sincere brothers, is translate one of the books of the Shuhada from the war between the Islamic Republic and the Ba'athis, right, during the 8 years. The name of the Shaheed is Ibrahim Hadi. Became very famous, right? If you want to know of a person who affects his surroundings, think about this. This is a person who became Shaheed 40 years ago, right? In a foreign land, foreign language, foreign culture. And we are here on the birth of the Prophet, halfway across the world, having the honor and the tawfiq to be able to introduce him. Right? That's what you call someone who's actually followed the Prophet and how he had become a magnet. His personality has such strong attraction that Ayatollah Khamenei said when he read this book, not the English, the Farsi, the original version, he said, after I read this book, I placed it on the side, like on the shelf next to me. I could not get myself to put the book back into the bookshelf. Right? What kind of a personality does that? Has that effect on people? I'm going to touch upon a couple of points from his life just to make you understand who he is, and then hopefully that will lead you to actually get the book as well. Everything about him was just something else. He was a normal foot soldier, by the way. He wasn't an officer or a high-ranking, like one of the generals who became... No, he was a normal foot soldier. The person who compiled the book initially, the book in Farsi initially, he says that he writes about why he decided to, compile his stories, because it's not easy. Like, okay, you find a shaheed, it's like, I want to find out his whole life story now. He goes, I had a dream one day. By the way, it shows you the level of the person himself who compiled the book. He said, I had a dream one day in which I saw a personality by the name of Sheikh Zahid Hussain. Right? Sheikh Zahid Hussain is known as one of the teachers of the Urafa. So imagine what his status is. One of the most famous students that he had was Dr. Tehrani, who was one of the biggest teachers of akhlaq in Iran in recent history. And there were others as well who were his students. The teacher of the Urafa. So imagine what his status is. So he said, in my dream, I saw Sheikh Zahid Hussain speaking to his students of Urafa. And what does he say in that dream? He says to his students, why do you come to me for advice on practical irfan when I myself have a teacher who I go to? And who is that teacher? He goes, that teacher is this person. And he was holding like a picture, right? And he said, like in my dream, I tried to see who it was, and I realized that's a picture of Ibrahim Hadi. This teacher of the Urafa is saying that my teacher in practical irfan is this person, Ibrahim Hadi. So the person wakes up, he's like, okay, I need to find out who this Ibrahim Hadi is. And he goes on this crazy journey that's documented in the book of who this Ibrahim Hadi is. I'm just going to mention one thing from him. His adhan. Very famous. His adhan became very famous. During the time of the revolution, he was known to have a really nice voice. One of the acts that he would do just before the revolution had taken place was during the time of salah, when it was time to recite the adhan, he would be in a busy place, like a marketplace or somewhere outdoors. As soon as it was time for salah, in the loudest of voices that he could, he would start reciting the adhan. As soon as he would finish, he would disappear. And the secret police of the Shah, the Savak, they would come and they would be trying to look for, who was the person who recited the adhan. It was one of his acts of resistance. That adhan developed during the war. There's this very famous story, which I may have mentioned it to you, but it's good to remember. There was this one specific operation which was one of the game changers in the whole war. It was an 8-year war. After 2 years, the Ba'athis stopped going on the offensive and it turned around. The Islamic Republic fought back and they got back that land, and they actually entered some of southern Iraq as well. One of the decisive battles that took place which changed this around was this specific operation in which they had to capture 3 hills, right? So these 3 hills were controlled by the Ba'athis at that time. The army of the Islamic Republic, they were fighting, and they very hard fought battle. They managed to capture the first hill, but very difficult, intense fighting. They gave a lot of shuhada, captured the first hill. Second hill, even more difficult. Then it came to the third hill. The third hill was so difficult, there was a stalemate. There are 2 types of stalemates that you have in war. One in which, you've dug your trenches and these are the defenses and no one is firing or anything. The fighting was so intense that in this stalemate, it was the second type of stalemate, which is the firing was so intense that no one was moving. Right? That's how intense the firing was. One of the days, close to the time of Fajr, Salah, the firing quietened down a bit, the intensity lowered a bit. The situation was such, you leave the trench, you get shot. It's simple as that. It's time for Fajr. Ibrahim Hadi, what does he do? Without saying anything to anyone, takes his gun, puts it to the side, leaves the trench. Not only does he leave the trench, he goes on top of a boulder. So he's standing on top of this big stone, and he starts reciting the adhan. In that situation, just as he's finishing the adhan, there's a bullet which just goes, like grazes his neck, and he falls down, and they take him into the medical gown. After a while, the person who's narrating the story was the commander of the unit. He says, I heard outside like takbir and like salawat, and like people are celebrating. I'm like, what happened? And someone ran in and say that, oh yeah, they've given up the hill, like we won and stuff. And the commander, he started saying in his own mind that, like, I was thinking, alhamdulillah, the strategy we used, it worked, and the fighting of the boys, it worked, and this and that. From the hill, there were 16 people who came, like they surrendered, they gave themselves up. As they entered, the officer who was there, as soon as he entered, he said to the commander of the unit, who was the person that recited the adhan? And they're like, why? He says, because there is no way that the person who recited the adhan was on batil. They surrendered because of his adhan. They came in, they said, okay, we'll show you. They came in and they saw Ibrahim Hadi, with the injury to his neck. And they had one person with them with his hands tied. The officer of that Ba'athi unit said to Ibrahim Hadi, give us the order. This was the person who fired the shot which hit your neck. Give us the order and we'll execute him right now. He refused. He's like, no, please, calm down guys. Right? These 16 people that came, they changed sides and they joined Munzamatul Badr, right? The Badr brigade, which was the Iraqis who were fighting against Saddam Hussein. This unit commander, he said, over the years I would keep in touch with them. There was a time period where I lost touch of them, but then I went to find out, where they were. Each and every single one of those individuals had become shaheed. That one adhan of Ibrahim Hadi, against all the odds, not only did they surrender, but they built themselves to such a level that they were gifted the rank of Shahada themselves. You want to talk about having an effect on your surroundings, having an effect on other individuals and stuff? Ibrahim Hadi. The whole book is full of stories of how he built himself up to reach such a level. It would be amazing if you guys could buy it. In fact, just to give you an idea of how much it's affected people, I think I told Shaykh Arish this yesterday, that we're actually now compiling a small book of all the people in the West who have read his book and their lives have been changed. Agha Panahiyan says that people who read this book split their lives in two parts. One part is before reading the book, and the other part is after reading the book. That's how much of an effect it's had. I'll leave you with one last story, which is in volume 2 of this book, which is also now translated. Volume 2, the end of it, it speaks about the shuhada in Syria who fought against Daesh, and how they were inspired by Ibrahim Hadi. So there's this one shaheed, the last entry he had in his diary. He says that today I saw a dream in which I was told that I was going to become a shaheed. Like one of the most beautiful things that the shuhada speak about is the time where they're actually told that, okay, you're going to be shaheed. Right? Anyway, so he writes in his diary entry that I was told I was going to become a shaheed. I saw a dream in which I was standing there and there was a person who was next to me who I felt like I knew him. And I saw Ibrahim Hadi sitting in my dream. I saw him sitting in the corner. And I was completely blown away. This person who's narrating the story, every operation he took part in, he had a picture of Ibrahim Hadi. he would take a picture of Ibrahim Hadi. That's how much love he had for Ibrahim Hadi in all the operation. So the day he's being told, like in that dream when he's being told that he's going to be Shaheed, he's also gifted with, seeing Ibrahim Hadi as well. And he says to this person, is that Ibrahim Hadi? He's like, yeah, that's Ibrahim Hadi. And the first thing he says, what is he doing over here? Right? And his response, and I'll have to finish on this before I get in trouble. What was his response? It's like, don't you know? Ibrahim Hadi is, during this war, Ibrahim Hadi is a military advisor to Qasim Soleimani. That's who this personality is. Even in the first volume, the last chapter is dedicated to all those people who Ibrahim Hadi helped after his shahada. Please do have a read. And once you've had a read, please do tell us how it affected you as well. What we're planning to do is all the testimonials, this little booklet that we're making of how people have been affected by this, we're going to present it as a gift to the family of Shaheed Ibrahim Hadi when we go back, inshallah. We pray that Allah helps us use gatherings like these, use remembrances like these to get closer to Himself, to get closer to the best of His creations, the Prophet. We finish by making a pledge and a prayer, but more of a pledge, that we do not just want to be those who improve ourselves due to the messages of the Prophet, but we want to be among those who pick up his flag and continue his mission and help others as well raise their level. We pray that this is the end of us just floating through our lives and living like everyone else does and becoming among the closest companions, not only of the final messenger, but also of the final Imam, who is looking for friends right now. And in the end, we pray by the right of the final messenger that Allah hastens the reappearance of our beloved Master.